When I was 18, I married my childhood sweetheart and promptly produced 3 beautiful children. We had everything imaginable. We had an airplane, a swimming pool, fancy vacations, everything that you needed to have in order to have the American dream. I had fallen in an accident and it felt like I had a whiplash in my lower spine. The pain that I had was debilitating, and I would be taking more and more pain pills trying to get it to stop. I wasn't a mother to my children anymore. I wasn't a wife to my husband. I was just this poor, pathetic person on a lot of drugs. It was my only hope to be able to function without drugs again. I woke up in a striker frame circle bed, which is an awesome way to survive from surgery. It looked like a Ferris wheel for one. There were 2 big chrome hoops and a stretcher suspended in the middle with me on it. 3 times a day, 2 nurses would come in and then rotate me straight up and then over onto my face. And they would air out my back for 20 minutes so I wouldn't get pressure sores. 3 days after surgery, a respiratory therapist came in and told me that they were concerned about my breathing, that my breathing was becoming very shallow. And so he was going to hook me up to this machine and it would breathe for me. He put this thing in my mouth that was between my gums and my lips so I couldn't remove it. Air would flow in and I could feel it expanding my lungs, and then it would stop when my lungs were expanded and flow back out again. And he watched about 3 or 4 breaths, and then he kind of signaled me that he was going to go out for a few minutes and he'd be back before the treatment was over. And he left. And I just was lying there feeling it moving in and moving out, moving in and moving out. And then all of a sudden it just kept going and going and going. And it was as though somebody had stuck a hose in my mouth and turned on water and I was drowning. There was no way I could catch my breath. It was just expanding me. Like my lungs were going to explode. And it was so terrifying. I became so scared that I lost consciousness. And I looked down at my body and I looked like I was in my 9th month. And I thought, oh, I'm having another baby. I must be in labor. My whole body had swollen up and I had 2 huge incisions in my back and they were pulling open. So the pain was excruciating. And I started calling and then I started screaming. And people started rushing in. My blood pressure had fallen really low and they were screaming out my blood pressure. It was so chaotic and it was so intense. And that's when I started yelling, leave me alone, let me die, let me die. It was so frightening the way everybody was acting. It just really wasn't worth trying to struggle to survive. And the next thing I knew, I was out in the hallway. And I looked up and down the hall and I didn't see anybody, but I thought, if they catch me out here, I'm going to get into trouble. So I turned around to move back into the room and saw the PA speaker at nose level. Now, I knew when I came into the hospital that PA speaker was mounted on the ceiling. And that's when I thought, something really strange is going on here. I moved back into the room and I saw my body lying in the circle bed, but it didn't feel like it was me anymore. I was up at the ceiling looking down and I realized I felt calm. I probably had never felt that peaceful in my life. It was like all the stress was gone. But the next thing I knew, I was in total darkness. I believe that from the beginning of that experience, my body was dead because my soul wasn't in my body anymore. When I was out of my body and I could see it lying there, I knew I was dead. I knew I didn't want to go back to it. I was giving it up. So I moved into this darkness and I felt this lush warmth wrap itself around me and pull me into this. My grandmother had a huge bosom, and when she had hugged me as a child, it was like everything was okay, and my grandmother was pulling me into her. She was holding me and she was comforting me like she used to when I was a little girl. We relived all 19 years of our life together. She had died when I was 19. but every single scene from every single thing happened again. There was one time when she let me cook with her. I couldn't have been more than 3 or 4, and she pulled over this heavy wooden chair and put it next to the stove and stood me up on it. I can still feel her hands picking me up and putting me on this chair. And she went and she got her hairbrush, and I had very, very curly hair. And she made Shirley Temple kind of curls, long curls. And then she lifted me down, and I remember running into the bedroom and looking in her mirror and feeling just like Shirley Temple. She was there to guide me so that I could understand something of love that I could relate to. And then I started moving away from her. But it was okay. It was like from her heart to my heart, she let me know that she'd always be there waiting for me when I came back. I would have loved to have stayed with her, but I was suddenly back in my body. I remember opening my eyes and consciously realizing that I was back in the circle bed, back in that room, back with all the monitors and bags and pain, and it was like, ugh, yuck. It was torture. And even if I had never had a near-death experience, 6 months in a body cast would have changed me a lot. You can't run away from yourself when you're in a body cast for 6 months. My view of the American dream is there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's a lot of fun. I mean, I enjoyed all the material things that we had too, but we missed the point. So superficial. It's all about out there. When in fact what I learned was it's all about what's in here. That what we're really supposed to be here working on is our inner life, is learning how to love ourselves, learning how to love everybody else. And that's what we get to take with us when we die, is the love that we've given away our whole life. And I have 9 grandchildren now, and I know deep in my heart that I have the same, relationship with them that I had with my grandmother. And I take care of one of my little grandchildren 4 days a week. She's 18 months old now, and she's the love of my life, and she looks at me just the way I looked at my grandmother.